So we most definitely started off the new year strong. This chapter revealed and introduced a litany of different things, and honestly was a really great experience. The Shibuya arc has been nothing but incredible, and to end it off with a lot of open ties to build upon different things is something extremely exciting. The future for Kaizen is opening itself up even more. We have a massive reveal with Geto and who is controlling him, and the weird, mysterious aura that surrounds it. We have the world that's currently being built in front of our eyes and what that realistically looks like without Satoru Gojo in the picture. We have these new understandings towards different abilities and the evolution for them, and just so many incredible things to indulge in that make Kaizen's path to success even more vibrant and even more fruitful. I'm extremely curious in how all of these things that are being introduced now and how the Shibuya arc has built upon it is going to equal out to, what the results or consequences are truly going to be, what the world is going to look like. For the most part, there is a lot to take from this chapter, especially surrounding Geto and the kind of weirdness implemented within himself, which is known as Noritoshi, the most evil sorcerer to exist, which used to live 150 to 200 odd years ago, which not necessarily a big surprise if you're part of the kind of core Kaizen community. It's been a theory for quite some time, and to be honest, it's probably one of the more simplistic ones because it's a very easy connection or thread to make. There was just no backbone or framework for it. It was literally just connecting this character that we rarely knew about. We only seen one instant of him or one mention of him, and then connecting that to some random individual that was controlling Geto. Point A to point B, that's about it. Simplistic, but turned out to be true. And now that we're getting a little bit more context for it, it's evolving and turning itself into a much bigger and better plot and idea. However, it doesn't seem to be that inherently simple. There seems to be some quirks or things here that we actually have seen before regarding the, person or thing that is controlling Geto. And the reason I say it like that is because of how Noritoshi, at least as an individual, speaks and the way he frames his words surrounding Geto and surrounding the things that he is looking at or feeling, etc., etc. It's almost like Geto and Noritoshi both coexist, but the mentality or the consciousness or maybe even a portion of the soul that Geto has is not actually there. To kind of break that down in more simpler terms, the way Noritoshi speaks within Geto's body is him also implying or taking into consideration the abilities, senses, and everything else included that Geto has combined all into one. So if Geto sends something, it's not because of Noritoshi using that ability or understanding it himself, it's more so just Geto doing it out of kind of nature. At least that is the interpretation I took for it, and we've seen something very similar. The first time any sort of instant like that was shown to us was when Geto met face to face with Gojo before he sealed him away, and we've seen how Geto's body reacted to Gojo, trying to choke himself out, but the conscious or the brain wasn't necessarily there, and that's because Noritoshi has been implemented inside. So they kind of coexist at the moment with one another, at least that's kind of how I've interpreted it, and Noritoshi actively takes into consideration the senses and bodily function that Geto has into consideration, which is a rather intelligent thing. It's not like he's losing out on a massive portion of abilities or things that he could be playing upon. It seems like he's borderline just absorbing any sort of information that Geto indulges in subconsciously. It makes me question if Geto could subconsciously try to make it more difficult for Noritoshi. That's more of a stretch in itself. I think it brings up some pretty interesting ideas that you could play upon if Geto could somehow subconsciously play against Noritoshi in trying to kind of devalue any sort of control he has over the body or senses or to whatever degree it may be, and to actively put Noritoshi at a disadvantage. Nothing necessarily implies that within this chapter, it's more so just what I'm going off in the sense of how Noritoshi speaks to himself, or at least speaks to Geto. It's a very odd and weird disassociation thing which is really enjoyable. It just makes me curious in how far you could truly go with it. But for the most part, I'm really liking it, and the reveal of Noritoshi, or whatever name he wants to go by, is incredibly captivating, and I'm excited to see where it goes from here. So we also kind of figured out what happened with Mahito, which belittles my hopes for Mahito to return. I still think he's going to return in the future, whether it be completely reformed, controlled, or even more powerful than before. But after what we just witnessed, which is Geto's new ability he calls Maximum Uzumaki, which the name itself is a reference to Junji Ito's Uzumaki, which is an extremely iconic book, and even the ability itself is depicted or referenced, paying homage to Junji Ito's Uzumaki. If I can get a picture of it without getting striked down, I'll definitely put it on screen. But that spiral is Mahito with a combination of other powerful curses. At least that's kind of how Geto frames it. I'm not too sure how many powerful curses he has, and that's grade 1 and higher. So he's mixed Mahito with all of them to create Uzumaki, which draws out its full potential. Because originally he viewed it as a waste because he couldn't use different curses and their abilities within different timing periods. But this Uzumaki seems to be rather powerful because of how he's gone about it. Not to mention you can see Mahito's stitches within the Uzumaki spiral body that we see. Before he can even pop that off though, we have the reintroduction to the Kyoto children. I found it a little bit odd that they came in very last moment, even though we knew that they were on their way thanks to the Mekamaru situation and that rather saddening goodbye quite a handful of chapters ago. But I'm surprised that they were actually used the way they were. I'm also just kind of putting it down as Geto being very multi-talented and being able to avoid or easily somewhat deal with all of them, because there's about 4 of them if I remember correctly. And there's one little moment with Miwa where she reflects on her past and what the sword means to her and how much power she wants to get, and it's actually kind of nice, especially when you reflect on the Mekamaru stuff. But Geto, or Noritoshi, obviously obliterates her sword with ease, which is a little bit disheartening, but I guess it's more so just once again a showcase of how versatile Noritoshi currently is, versing so many different people with ease that do hold quite a bit of power themselves. The person who saves all of them from getting obliterated by the formed Uzumaki sitting above Geto's head is Kusakabe, which I absolutely love the introduction for him. I think he's going to be playing a much bigger role, and this is just more so the start for it, especially with his thought process and what he wants to do with Yuji and how he wants to handle that situation politically. Basically being on the side of taking Yuji out and not allowing him to live anymore because of the destruction that Sukuna has caused. So him as a character is already rather interesting. Seeing how he's going to play a more significant role within the future is starting to come forward more within these chapters, and showing off that he has a bit of ability or a bit of skill is a great thing. With Kusakabe's arrival, we also get Panda and, funny enough, Chozo. And this kind of forms into the ending of the chapter with everyone being within the vicinity, Noritoshi basically revealing himself and saying that he goes by many different names, and this is recognized because of Chozo. So as much as there is a lot of different people on this battlefield currently, the person kind of taking charge and really challenging Geto, if you'd want to call it that even, is none other than Chozo, which is technically his own son. I like the ending of this chapter a lot, especially anything surrounding Chozo, because he's slowly becoming a favorite of mine as a character, and I'm hoping that he doesn't get absolutely obliterated in the next chapter, so we get to see him thrive and grow and become a more prominent individual, especially with how he recognized Yuji being a brother for himself. With the memory manipulation that goes on, we can see how consistent it actually is and how it genuinely warps the memories and the mindset to the point of deep-rooted emotions to such a percentile degree. It's not just a loose throw in some memories and stitch it all together. It feels authentic, it feels real, and I'm kind of hoping this leads down a path of Chozo being not necessarily redeemed, but acknowledged. Acknowledged by Yuji, acknowledged by other people, and someone that is a curse but can grow and flourish as a human. It kind of plays on the core traits of the story, and especially what this new world or the Shibuya arc has kind of built upon. Mahito being very humanoid and having human emotions, blurring that line between curses and humans. Chozo is a brand new example for him. Chapter alone and the previous one showing that little snippet of him having a existential crisis, him being extremely anxious and angry and showing emotions that we have not seen from him before. He's becoming very human. And obviously this is all directed towards Noritoshi because as a cursed womb, a death painting, recognizes that Noritoshi was the one to basically create him. Chozo's mother was impregnated by a curse, and Noritoshi mixed his blood within to give birth to the death painting wombs. So here we are. We then get the arrival of that one person who I can never remember the name of that Sukuna was in cahoots with, who genuinely seems rather powerful and obviously is on Noritoshi or Geto's side. So I think this fight has most likely come to a conclusion. There'll probably be a lot of information in next week's chapter, but I absolutely loved everything within here. Super simple and kind of closing things off and building upon new things and adding new threads, obviously, which is always great to see. Not to mention a pretty big reveal which still doesn't actually have that much clarity. Yes, we get Noritoshi, but what is the brain? Is that Noritoshi's technique? And it kind of implies that it is, but I still don't believe that it is. I still believe that the person that has the technique that allows another individual to be in that body is the doctor from Yuji's school, which if that is her ability or technique, or she knows someone that can do that and she just has access to allow it, that reconfirms my idea that maybe Noritoshi is looking for a legitimate vessel to be reborn back into. Very similar to the Yuji and Sukuna situation. But then Sukuna and this person that now Noritoshi is connected to makes me recognize that there is a much bigger plan in motion. What it gives birth to and what it introduces is not entirely known yet, but it's slowly revealing itself and in a very flirtatious type of way. There's a lot of characters here currently. I don't think any of them are realistically going to die, but the potential of Chozo just getting demolished is very high. I don't necessarily want to see it, but you never really know. He could get absorbed like Mahito, but I do think we're going to get a little bit more information before they genuinely vanish or disappear. I'm sure Geto can realize that he is extremely outnumbered and doesn't want to throw out all of his abilities right here and now. If anything, I'm extremely excited to see where we go from here. I absolutely love this chapter. A lot of information, a great reveal, some beautiful artwork, and overall just enjoyable. A big mixture of different characters, different abilities, and the future for Kaizen is looking better than ever. And I'm very curious and excited to see what is building within the background and how it slowly starts to rise and form itself in front of our eyes. So with that being said, that is basically it. Let me know how you felt about the chapter. How'd you feel about Noritoshi? Do you think that is even him? Do you think it's someone else? Do you think Brain and Noritoshi are two different people? It's kind of a weird disconnect between Noritoshi, the Brain, and Geto, which understandable. But also, how do you feel about the story of Kaizen and where it's currently leading to? What do you think this new world is going to look like? I'd love to hear your thoughts. But I want to thank you all for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Drink plenty of water, and I will see you within the next one. Goodbye.